What's up, guys? Chances are if you clicked on this video, you're probably shopping for a holster and you're wondering what guard you should order on it. Let's see if I can help you out. Okay, so what is a sweat guard? What you're picking right now is how much Kydex you want left on your holster to guard your gun from sweat. So you have high, mid, or none. And it's just the amount of Kydex that company is gonna leave on that runs up your slide to protect your gun from sweat. This is the holster that I run from Tier 1 Concealed. It's their Axis Slim, and I order it with no guard. Tier 1 was nice enough to send me all their guard options so I can show them to you guys, and then we'll go through the pluses and minuses of all those styles. So Midgard holster is kind of the best of both worlds, I guess you'd say. If you do want the things that come with a high guard and a low guard, you know, the Midgard is kind of that sweet spot. I ran this holster for about a year. I really did like it. The only thing I didn't like is when the gun was out, I would feel this Kydex pushing into my little bit of a belly. But the Midgard has that touch point to bring the gun down in. It does have a guard from sweat if you're worried about it getting on your slide or your optic. And then it doesn't have that huge knife-like bit of the high guard. So if it's me, and people ask me on Instagram, you know, what guard should I get? I always say that I get no guard, but if I wanted any bit of a guard, I would go mid. I would never go high. That's just a personal thing for me. And that's also because of my body type and my level of sweat. You know, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but that's just my recommendation for me. Another thing to think about is if you have belly hair. A lot of the times the belly hair can get stuck between your gun and the holster, and that is not a fun pain either, I would imagine. I'm not a hairy guy, but I've heard from my buddies that it's not as fun, same as getting pinched. So the guard gives you just a little bit of shield from those pains, especially if you're running a class or holstering, reholstering a lot for whatever situation. It's nice to not have to really worry about those things. So that is where a guard does come into play. Like I said, with me, not a sweaty guy, and I don't really have that big a belly or belly hair, so the no guard works for my type. But if it doesn't work for you, try them out. The one thing I will say is if you get a high guard or a mid guard and you don't like it, just cut it off and then sand that Kydex down and run a lighter along it and just smooth it out. So there is an upside to buying a mid guard or a high guard because you have the ability to turn it into a no guard. Whereas if you go no guard and don't like it, obviously you can't put that Kydex back on. So that is one thing to think about. So like I said, if you're unsure about what guard to get, here's a perfect example of one that I ordered mid and I wanted to cut it down. So I just lopped it off with a table saw and then sanded and melted it down. So buying a high guard or mid guard gives you that option of moving to no guard. All right, so here's the Glock 43 in the QVO more discreet. This has a mid guard. Now you could use this one at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock if you wanted to as well. But I use the appendix as like the backup to my backup. But we'll take a rep with it here and then I'll show you something with the holster. So one thing to notice, if this, let's see if I can get it here. If this was to tip either way and I didn't have that guard, that holster can kind of get in my waistline. Now for me, when I reholster, I look it in, but if I didn't and it had tipped, you're gonna kind of have to find that opening. Just something to consider. This is Tier 1's Aegis with the snaps. This mag caddy can snap off and you can have just the holster if you want to be more concealable. This is in the high guard, runs all the way up to the top of the slide. I know people that carry their holster all day in high humidity. They like to run high guard just because it keeps the gun dry, but also it keeps the moisture off the internal components so they don't have to worry about it. Personally for me, I check my gun every time I put my holster on. I always press check, make sure it rounds in, make sure my dot's on, things like that. So I'm always checking my gun so I would know if it started deteriorating when it came to that. Just something to think about if you do run humidity. And then, like I said, I don't like having this high guard because when I shoot, I tend to do VTACs. I tend to be moving, bending over, things like that. And this high piece of Kydex is just like a little gut wrencher. It just stabs the hell out of you. It's not very comfortable for that, but it does give you, if you're reholstering, it gives you that touch point to guide that holster back in. And you're not gonna really pinch yourself on this one as much as you would with a no guard or mid guard. So one thing I do want to touch on is there is people that do not believe in looking your gun into your holster. You know, they probably come from the same mentality of not looking your magazine into your gun when you're doing reloads. I look my gun into my holster every time. So if I'm working and then I go to holster, I look and I seat it. It's the same reason I look my magazine in every time. It's because I'm gonna get it right the first time, every single time. It takes a fraction of a second to check. So that's another reason that I don't mind having no guard, is I'm not worried about missing my holster because I look it in every time. So this is the Tier 1 Axis Slim. This is no guard. This is the holster I use all the time. I can feel the grip and the magazine. It touches my stomach, but because my belly's kind of behind it, it doesn't bother me as much. And when I sit in the car, when I sit down, I just push it like this and my belly kind of drops behind it. So it's not as uncomfortable. I will say though that I do get stippling and the RMR, or this is the SRO, but they're actually engraved into my stomach or imprinted into my stomach after I ride in the car for a long time from that gun pushing into it. So if I had the guard there, it may help the Highgard, but you'd have the imprint of the guard instead of the gun. So I don't know how much of a difference that is. I will say sometimes though with stippling, especially new stippling, it tends to sandpaper your gut. So if you have a guard there, it may help eliminate that until you wear that stippling down with shooting. But we'll take some reps here from the Axis Slim no guard. Reholster, look it in. Like I said, I look my gun in every time, so I don't really worry about that touch point. But if you don't have the confidence in that area, that guard on your belly allows you to have that little spot to kind of touch the gun and then slide it in, and you don't have to be as concerned with just getting it right away. So if you don't want to look the gun in, or you're concerned about you know touching that gun somewhere you don't want it to be, that's something to consider. One very rare thing is if you shoot your gun a lot, or if you're in the sun a lot and that slide gets hot, the slide's touching your belly without a guard, you'd have to really run your gun a lot or leave it. Let's say you left it on the table in the sun, then you're definitely gonna notice it there, but really that's not a problem most people will run into. And sweat guards, you sometimes have to think about it with outside the waistband. This is a Tier 1 Optio. This has a Midgard, I would call it. I used to run a T-Rex Arms Ragnarok that had no guard. I don't really think about it that much when you're running outside the waistband because it's a sweat guard. But again, it's that touch point to get that gun into your holster. If that's something you're concerned about, I'm not sure how many companies are gonna have that option for their outside the waistband, but we'll take some reps with it. Look it in, make sure that shirt's clear. That's another reason I look it in. Depending on how many layers you have, even if you think you got one shirt out of the way, if you have a hoodie or a jacket and something gets in there, gets caught in that trigger guard, that's a problem. That's why I always look it in. Even if I know the gun's dry and I drop that slide after I'm done, I still look it in, conscious reps. Just wanted to thank you guys for watching the video. I know before I made this video, I searched YouTube trying to answer this question and there just wasn't a good video out there, so I hope this one is helpful. I didn't do a ton of research going into this video, so if I missed anything when it comes to the guards, please drop a comment so someone can read them and it may help them out. If you like the video, please like, please subscribe. I really enjoy making these videos for you. If you have any questions for me, please drop a comment on YouTube or on Instagram. My name is Embrace the Recoil. If you DM me there, I answer all my DMs. Thank you for watching the video. See you guys later.